everybody, welcome back to AV Poetry. Today we will be talking about the sonnet. I realized the other day that I don't have a single sonnet on my poetry website, and I was a bit embarrassed about that because even if you've never even been introduced to poetry, you at least know what a sonnet is. I mean, Shakespeare sonnets, that's like poetry. If you never know anything else about poetry, I mean, you'll know that at least. So, anyway, I figured I should probably represent that form of poetry somewhere on my website, at least give a polite nod to it, right? So, I've written a Shakespearean sonnet for today. But before I read it to you, I figure, why not go over the format? Maybe you can write your own Shakespearean sonnet after this video or something, right? Maybe. Give it a whirl. Um, okay, but the sonnet format. Okay. A sonnet is basically a poem made up of 14 lines. Those lines are broken down into four parts. The first three parts are called quatrains. They're called that because they're groups of four lines, right? Okay, so you have three quatrains made up of 4 lines apiece. That gives you 12 lines. The last part is a rhyming couplet, 14 lines in total. Okay. The rhyme scheme of a sonnet, a Shakespearean sonnet, mind you, because rhyme schemes differ depending on the kind of sonnet. You're writing, reading, whatever. Um, Shakespearean sonnet basically has an alternating rhyme scheme. So in the first quatrain, um, the the rhyming is A B A B. Second is C D C D. Third quatrain is E F E F, and the rhyming couplet is G G. Okay, so alternating rhyme scheme. Okay. And then there's this other factor called iambic pentameter, and you must have heard about this in some high school English class somewhere along the line, and promptly forgot about it because I was an English major. I forgot how it went, and anyway, but iambic pentameter is basically um, each line um, is made up of 5 unstressed and 5 stressed syllables. So it's like, well, the rhythm is like da 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 da, kind of like you're just riding on a horse, whatever. Anyway, but you can play around with it so it's not so monotonous. I mean, if it's monotonous, it's not an enjoyable poem to listen to, right? So anyway, but that's your basic rhythm, and you can add extra silent or unstressed syllables here and there. I mean, people cheat a little bit. I mean, I cheated a little bit in some of my lines, but you'll hear it when I read the poem. But I mean, and that's just a very brief, basic explanation of iambic pentameter. Um, and one more thing I want to address about the sonnet is the pacing of the poem. Now, three, the first two stanzas in a sonnet are meant to set up, the idea, the situation. They kind of set the scene of the whole poem. This is what's going on, and this is how it is. And somewhere in the third stanza is this little thing poets like to call the volta. And it's basically the turning point or the climax of the poem. So, you're going along, you set the scene up in the first two stanzas, and somewhere, in the middle of the third stanza, a realization starts to dawn, or a certain truth starts to become evident. Some sort of climactic moment is unfolding in this third stanza, and then the couplet, lays it all out and, is some sort of conclusion. So that's the basic format of the Shakespearean sonnet. Hope that was helpful to you, and there are lots of resources online you can look up to get more detailed explanations or to see it written out for you. Um, so yeah, but I mean that's the basic layout. So I will read you my Shakespearean sonnet. Uh, it's called Better Late Than Never, and it goes like this. I've watched the sidewalk cracks as they have widened. Don't tell me that the leaves have not yet turned. I've just been looking for a place to dive in, so don't you tell me that the sea has burned. Your morning star is edging up the eddy, so bright and blazing boldly as God's chariot. So don't you say to me that you are not ready. If you've a coin of doubt, it's time to bury it. You've watched your journey passing from rear windows, and been held captive, strapped down to the seat. Your thoughts and inklings, they have swum like minnows. They wait to make escape to dusty streets. Oh, must you live the fate of those souls cursed? God fashioned you to be a fiery burst. So that's my nod to the Shakespearean sonnet, and they're finally being represented on the website. I'm gonna have my own, their own little special section that's gonna be there. So anyway, in my sonnet, it's kind of just about life really, but I mean, it can be about anything. Traditionally, sonnets, um, were about love or some philosophical idea or something, but really, I mean, especially modern sonnets, I mean, anything's acceptable. You can write about anything, and yeah, and, and enjoy yourself and have fun with it. So yeah, I hope you are, encouraged to try Shakespearean sonnet, and don't let the structure intimidate you. I know a lot of people are drawn to, like prose poetry or, a free verse because it's like, oh, well, I have more flexibility to express myself, and and that's good. I mean, those are great forms to experiment with. But formal poetry, has its its own pluses too, because being forced to write in a certain type of form forces you to think differently than you might have if you were just, relying on your own devices, relying on your own intuition, like, oh, well, I feel like I should do this with the poem or this, and really the form actually helps guide you a little bit, or veers you off in directions, yeah, that you wouldn't have thought of. When I was in creative writing class in college, one of my professors, he he said that writing a formal poetry is kind of like dancing in chains. It's like you can still dance, but you might make different movements than you thought you would. Um, so anyway, yeah, so go dance in some chains, go write some Shakespearean sonnets, or experiment with other sonnets too, because there are other forms out there. So anyway, that's all I have for you today, and have a good one. I'll see you later.